Hey, welcome back. It's Emily, another handicapping video. Sorry for the long pause. Took a little break with the NHC, but got to get back on track, get some videos. So a lot of action this weekend. Hopefully I'll post a few videos looking at especially the 3-year-old races. And we'll start off with this one. The Withers Grade 3. This is on Saturday at Aqueduct, earning points toward Kentucky Derby. So, purpose of this video is we can gain a lot from the plot. So I'm going to kind of talk about the plot and different pace scenarios I see using optics plot, and then of course we'll get into the grid. Just kind of validate anybody moving forward, looking at current form. I'm trying to keep the videos short. That seems to be one of the feedback comments I'm getting, so I'm going to do my best. So starting with the plot here, we have our favorite who's sitting as a big square above the par line, good sized square above the par line in quadrant 1, El Arib. And looking at this horse, I'll actually kind of pull up the PP as we're sitting right next to it, pull up the grid. I'll kind of expand on some of these races, they just filled them in. Going to be the favorite, has strong positional speed and is able to kick. That's represented by the square. So when I'm looking at this, I want to see a horse, is he vulnerable from anything from a pace standpoint, looks fairly strong, could be compromised by some others, which we'll see that'll kind of hurt their chances as well. Coming off a B+ effort last time out in the Jerome, was lone, but kicked away, did it strong, kind of had a little bit of pressure, sat right off pace setter and then kicked away. We'll get into the grid because I did fill out a bunch of these other trips here. Back at Laurel, some other B+. So this horse has put nothing but strong effort back to back. And, looking at this horse and just kind of my own personal preference, I'm never really drawn towards front-running horses. Like, they're not as exciting to me. I was kind of like, let's see who else is in here. But I watched this horse, went back, watched his races, and looked at his workout tab, and he's just a really solid horse. I mean, this horse just works every 6 days, takes care of himself, from a athletic standpoint, likes his job. So I kind of just became a fan of this horse. He's really cool, and he looks strong as the favorite in here. So going into like a pace, there are some other horses that are positioned in quadrant 1 as well as to the left of the y-axis. So we're looking at the 3, 7, 8, 9. And so a couple of these horses, let's see who's stretching out here. 3 is already gone, route. The 9 and the 7, both in quadrant 1 here, are stretching out from a sprint. And we can see that they're behind. If I kind of click on map the first call, 4 should be alone. He's the only one in orange, and then they're kind of green. So if they decide to go, they just don't seem to be right now fast enough early, so they're going to be kind of in chase mode. So that makes, to me, kind of the way that I'm reading this and then looking through, again, the grid, it makes these horses a little bit vulnerable. They just don't have enough speed early and then are going to tire themselves out in the process. So in order for them to win, they're not going to win by chasing, right? Assuming that this horse shows up and runs his race, right? Of course, it's horse racing, anything can happen, but we're not going to play the what-if game. So in order for them to win from this position on the plot, that would require somebody putting pressure on 4. And so, again, if they decide to do that, a bit of a suicide mission, which would set up for 1, who I'll talk about, not favorable, 10. Again, looking a little bit less favorable, circle quadrant 2, 6 to 5. So from a handicapping standpoint, what I'm looking for is, are these horses fast enough to go early, tire this horse out, set it up for them, or potentially be moving forward enough to kind of run a race similar to the 4 on the plot, and not really seeing it. So 3, 7, 8, 9, we'll kind of look at these horses. B, last time out on the 3, over a good track at a route. Speed figure wise, just a little bit below, so too slow, not enough kind of moving forward. We'll go to the 7. I'm kind of scrolling around. This horse is stretching out for the first time. Game on the front end. Didn't cave, just second best. Ran best figure, improved 12 points. Did have some B's going back and maiden gate pocket. So fractious through rider in the gate. Going to be chasing. Not really seeing that move forward. The number 8, I went back and watched this one at Parks. Definitely green in the stretch, turning his head to the inside. Might have been a reaction to the whip again. Just a horse that is a little bit too slow, has some try, but is really going to have to take a step forward. Hard to endorse on the win end. And the number 9, the other one that's kind of stretching out off those 2 Parks races. Kind of went back and I watched these races, even that first one. Was a little bit slow, kind of got a setup. Rated inside last time, which track looked to be tiring. So, earned some strong speed figures coming from Parks. I'm inclined to watch another one. I didn't really see enough to think that this horse is going to move forward. He's still kind of learning. So maybe I'd mess around with him underneath. Should be a big price, but hard for me to kind of watch and see that horse is going to take that big step forward. So that kind of looks at the horses that are again switch back over in quadrant 1 to see if they're going to kind of move forward to attack the 4, or just kind of be sitting in the right spot to close. And going off what we've seen on the grid from grades and from speed figure standpoint, it doesn't look like it. So let's look at our 2 circles. That's the 1 and the 10. The number 1 comes out of the same Jerome. Inside trip, I just thought this horse was really one-paced, just kind of grindy. So, the more distance, the better, but just doesn't have that real punch, that real staying ability. There's another horse that came out of that race that was a little bit more interesting, earning roughly the same speed figure. We'll get to that one in a second. So, number 1, just, again, 69, 79, just not fast enough to compete. Has to take a big step forward off that last effort. It's really hard to make that case. The number 10, J-Boy's Echo. Again, speed figures, it's a little bit slow, but that comes back in November at Delta Jackpot. He does have an improve. So you have that from a positive standpoint. We'll need, he's sitting in quadrant 2, which isn't a terrible spot, and it is a small circle. We can kind of make cases to improve. So I can't necessarily toss this horse, but I'm not like in love with this horse to like pull the upset. I guess, if you're thinking that the 4 is vulnerable, this would be one of the horses you'd look at. I'd have to take a price on him. He just seems like there are a lot of hurdles for him making that step forward, getting the right trip. Kind of an interesting one because I read the short comment in the chart that this horse had to steady at the top of the stretch. And I didn't see it that way. There was a potential incident. I'll read the long comment here. Smart heads up ride, raced inside, went to move out as they hit the top of the stretch. Rider reacted perfectly when the front runner drifted and drove inside, closing up the rail. Very smart reactive ride. Poor decision would have cost him the race. So really good ride by Alvarado, who's jumping back aboard. So when you see that comment, go back, watch the race. I mean, it was a really, really smart move. Kind of fun to watch. So let's get into our squares that are sitting in quadrant 4. And again, I think it's important, if you're watching this video, you don't use plot often, to understand that the circles and squares, they're in relationship to each other. Okay, and when you have horses like this that are lightly raced and they're improving, you can kind of be a little bit more flexible. Maybe they're not necessarily a closer, that there's been some dynamics, or they're a closer in a sprint and now they're stretching out. Those type of things that you have to think like, okay, maybe we have, the 5 down here. Oh, actually, I'm going to get into this horse. 7.5 lengths back, is a closer. And I'll actually talk about this because we'll go into that horse's last trip. This 5 horse bonus points, who also comes out of the Jerome, where he's far back early, and the note is traffic, and this horse was in traffic early and late. So in the early part of the race, he's kind of held up inside, and I think if with different dynamics breaking from the rail that day, this horse would have been closer to the pace. And we can even see, go back to these Belmont, route races, 1 to 3 lengths back. Here we had a slog traffic, so I can excuse that. We'll use these 2 races at Belmont, sitting a little bit closer to the pace, and that's kind of where I see this horse. Going back again, watching that race, the Jerome, this horse was held up early. He could have been a lot closer with different dynamics. So those are things when you're looking at the plot and looking at the running lines. You still do have to handicap, use some critical thinking. So this horse being a square, I'd kind of position him sort of more around, the 4 corner spot. So he could potentially be sitting a little bit closer, and if these horses do decide to go, maybe sitting kind of in the right trip there. Then you have to get into, is the horse quick enough? Does have some races. So I think if you're looking for an alternative, a case can be made for the number 5. We'll go to the number 2. That is another square sitting in quadrant 4. Wait for this. Oh no. Switched over to the wrong race. Alright, let's try this again. Coming off a layoff, so let's try this again. Alright, so the number 2, apart from the crowd. 3 B races, B- on debut, B- BTL with move, and then a B last time out, rank, pocket trip, bias, perfect. So a lot of things went right there. Jock grabbed this horse early and it got him rank, settled into a pocket, and floated, stayed inside on a good the whole way. Was on a good rail that day. So getting a rider change, which seems, going off that last note, isn't necessarily a bad thing. So a little bit more relaxed rider, obviously. Ortiz rides for Chad Brown quite often. So this horse improving with every start. Seems to be going in the right direction. Always big test. Facing winners in a graded stake race first time out. So, that's a little bit of a question, but, these races are not bad races. Been at a route every part of his career, so, case can be made from that horse. I just expect this horse to be pretty short price, probably solid second choice. Alright, last square in here, we'll go to the number 6. This is the other Pletcher horse. We do this right. Click over to the 6. A lot of green in this horse's running lines. So first time out, Belmont, scratched main track. I love these running lines. Then trainer scratch at 5.5. A B on debut, paddock plus, better than the look. Tactic, has to do with the ride, traffic, trouble. Nice looking paddock, well prepared, stalked outside. Jock made a few questionable decisions. Winner was best, but with a cleaner trip would have likely been second. Trouble start, closed, bobbled at the break, closed down center of the track. The trouble start is a bit of a concern because we can see that 3 times. The last time out, when he was bumped at the start, this horse it didn't cause it. There was a horse to the inside of him that broke slow, and then the horse to the inside of him. That horse came over, and this horse had his hind end knocked out from under him. That last race, that was not an easy win. He had to work for it. His hind end was knocked out at the start. He was carried wide on the first turn, stalked outside. The horse that ended up running second was just so far out, clear on the lead. This horse had to make a really bold run and run that horse down, and the two kind of a little bit of race riding in the stretch. So, then has this vet scratch at Parks on the 27th of December. So always, we see a lot of layoff lines, which is something I'm just not a fan of. And otherwise, a horse that looks good. We got a lot of green, a lot of B's, a lot of, grit, move, BTL, even that trouble in green. Those are all positive factors next time out. But that is a concern. So I think that this horse is, again, you're looking for an alternative. This horse is a player off that last race. Pletcher has both of Pletcher's runners. I think both the 5 and the 6 we'll go back to the 5, are both horses that I think are going in the right direction, are sitting on good races. So it's an interesting race. I think mostly from the plot, I think it's kind of fun to kind of look at these pace scenarios again. Whether this horse is going to be vulnerable on the front end. It's hard to make that case. I think that this horse seems legit out there. Not a horse I would be leaving off tickets, not running to the windows to bet, but I think overall it's a good race. It's an interesting race coming forward. I'll do a follow-up video on this race. Probably kind of the most important part. We'll catch up, kind of see where these horses are going to make their next move, whether they are moving forward towards the Kentucky Derby, whether ones we want to watch or fade going forward. All right, I'll be recording some more videos this week, and of course follow-ups next week, getting back on track on YouTube. Thanks again. Support the channel, subscribe if you haven't already, likes, and Optics EQ, our weekend package, $50. That's full access, trip notes for every track that we cover, plot every track that we cover. It's such an awesome deal when you're playing the races this weekend. All right, check out next video coming up soon.